How many times have you felt like you were praying, pleading with all your soul, and yet nothing happened? The sensation of echoing into a cosmic void, as if your words were disappearing into infinity, is more common than it seems. But what if I told you that there are prayers that are not only heard, but that literally bend the laws of reality? That there is a hidden, ancient, and deliberately forgotten knowledge capable of turning a simple prayer into a vibrational portal between worlds. A chant, not just of words, but of power, of creation, of revelation. This is the forgotten key, a fragment that would have slipped from the hands of time and manipulation, an ancestral chant attributed to Christ himself, who was able to alter matter, transit between dimensions, and collapse the limitations of ordinary existence. This knowledge is not in temples nor in popular doctrines. It has survived in scattered fragments, veiled by symbols, hidden in the lines of texts rejected by the council of men. To find it, one must go beyond the surface and dive where the word transforms into living vibration. There are records of a chant or prayer uttered by Christ that never made it to the official version of the Bible. A sound, a sung word, which was not just an expression, it was a tool. The Gnostic tradition, ignored by ecclesiastical powers, preserved echoes of this secret, small glimpses of what could be a sacred language, lost, but never extinguished. Many ancient cultures spoke of the creative power of sound. The Hindus had the considered the primal vibration of creation. The Egyptians invoked divine names through ritualistic intonations. The Hebrews knew the secret names of God, hidden in layers of sound, number, and intention, but Christ, he would have received or remembered something even deeper, a specific chant, an active prayer that resonated with a frequency capable of moving realities. The Essenes, a group to which many believe Jesus was connected, practiced sound and breathing techniques, morning and evening prayers intoned with almost scientific precision. It wasn't just faith, it was spiritual engineering. This difference is crucial. While most prayers are uttered with the expectation of being heard by something external, this lost prayer was different. It did not ask, it declared, it did not beg, it acknowledged. It was as if, when spoken with a heart aligned, with a quiet mind and with the correct vibration, this prayer became part of the universe's very code. It did not implore divine intervention. It connected directly with the source, and in doing so, it transformed the reality around the speaker. This explains why some ancient masters were capable of producing healings, multiplications, levitations, and other unusual phenomena. It was not magic. It was spiritual science, masterfully applied. The apocryphal Gospels, especially the Gospel of Thomas, provide clues to this wisdom. Phrases like, "If they ask you, 'Where do you come from?' tell them, 'We come from the light, from the place where the light arose by itself,' are not just mystical, they carry activation patterns. Each word carries a vibration, each sentence, a resonance field. The words that Christ would have used were careful, intentional, as if they were designed to alter states of consciousness. This also appears in manuscripts like the Nag Hammadi, where prayer and knowledge walk together, as if one reinforces the other. But perhaps the greatest indication of this song's existence is precisely in its disappearance. Why have so many records vanished? Why were texts destroyed or buried? The Council of Nicaea in 325 AD excluded a series of gospels and writings considered not appropriate, but appropriate for whom? For the awakening of the soul, or for the control of the masses? That which brings true freedom has always been hidden, veiled, labeled as heresy. The prayer that moves dimensions did not serve earthly power. It empowered the individual, awakened their divine spark, and this, for the empire builders, has always been too dangerous. Another essential point is understanding that this lost prayer was not made up of words alone. It involved breathing, sound, and vibrational state. It was a full-body experience, not a mental discourse. Modern science is beginning to confirm this through studies on frequency, sound, and intention. Researchers like Greg Braden and Bruce Lipton reveal how the human heart emits electromagnetic fields that interact with the quantum field, and how words charged with high emotion create tangible changes in the physical environment. The forgotten Christic prayer worked exactly like this, through the total integration of intention, emotion, and sound. Interestingly, the Our Father itself, in its original Aramaic version, is completely different from the popular translation. Its rhythmic intonation, its almost sung format, reveals a carefully constructed vibrational structure. It was not just a plea, it was a code, an alignment with higher forces. There are scholars who believe that the correct pronunciation of this text, combined with a state of cardiac and emotional coherence, can provoke expanded states of consciousness. We are, therefore, talking about an engineering of the soul, an internal map capable of reconnecting the being with the divine. This type of prayer does not rely on mechanical repetition. On the contrary, it reveals itself to those who are silent within, to those who listen to the silence before the sound, to those who prepare themselves to be an instrument, not just a transmitter. The sounds that make up this lost chant are not like ordinary words. They carry specific frequencies that access layers of reality ignored by common senses. That's why, in ancestral ceremonies, many accounts speak of visions, instantaneous healings, and states of communion. Sound, when imbued with truth, transforms. The big question that looms is, if such a prayer truly existed, why was it hidden? Why wasn't it preserved in the official Gospels? The answer may lie in the very power of this prayer. It eliminates the middleman. It transforms each person into a conscious co-creator. And when a human being realizes they can connect directly to the source, without dogmas, without intermediaries, without external temples, the control system loses strength. So, this knowledge was buried, labeled as dangerous, and its fragments kept only by initiates, mystics, and secret schools that have withstood time. And so, even fragmented, even hidden under 1,000 layers of interpretations, this prayer still lives. It pulses in the subtext of ancient texts. It vibrates in the oral tradition of forgotten peoples. It manifests in the tears of those who pray with their hearts. It breathes in the silence of monks, in the chants of shamans, in the reverence of masters. And perhaps it's just waiting for you to rediscover it. Because deep down, this forgotten prayer was never really lost. It has always been within you, dormant, waiting for your voice to awaken it. There is a profound mystery that modern science is only now beginning to touch with the fingers of curiosity. The word, when charged with true intention, vibrates beyond audible sound. It acts like a wave, a frequency that penetrates the fabric of reality. In cymatic experiments, a recent field of science that studies the effects of sound on matter, we see sand particles forming complex geometric designs when exposed to specific frequencies. The more harmonic the frequency, the more beautiful and ordered the forms. This proves something that the ancients already knew intuitively. Sound structures reality. The living word, when spoken with consciousness, is a constructive force. It reorganizes, heals, and expands. Nikola Tesla, the misunderstood genius, said that if we wanted to understand the universe, we should think in terms of frequency, vibration, and energy. This statement directly echoes in the field of prayer, for praying with aligned emotion is to create a vibrational wave that reverberates in space-time. The quantum field, studied by physicists like David Bohm, reveals that everything is connected, intertwined in an invisible web. This means that our words, especially when born from elevated emotional states such as gratitude, compassion, and faith, are not confined to our mind or the space around us. They travel. They reach the field of potentiality, shaping it. Researchers such as Greg Braden demonstrate how the coherence between the heart and the brain amplifies this vibrational wave. When a prayer is made in a state of alignment, when the mind quiets and the heart takes charge, the electromagnetic field generated by the human body expands, becoming a transmitter of pure intention. In this state, it is not the word that performs the miracle, but the vibration it carries. And it is precisely here that the ancient prayer attributed to Christ finds its most potent nature. It was not a request or a plea, it was an activation, a vibrational reminder of who we are and what we are capable of. Science proves that emotion-charged words transform the structure of water, as revealed in Masaru Emoto's experiments. Water crystals frozen after receiving words like love and gratitude formed beautiful, symmetrical patterns. Meanwhile, crystals exposed to negative words became deformed, chaotic. Knowing that our body is composed of about 70% water, imagine the impact of a prayer made with genuine presence, emotion, and intention. It reorganizes cells, fine-tunes thoughts, and most importantly, changes the field around the person praying. The lost Christic prayer operated precisely in this hidden field, reorganizing the invisible to transform the visible. When Christ spoke words of healing, he was not just speaking, he was vibrating. The rise and walk, or your faith has saved you, were phrases loaded with an almost indescribable vibrational coherence. It was not the sound itself, but the field he generated around him, a field of full conviction, without doubt, without hesitation. This is the secret of the living word. It needs to be full of certainty, stripped of fear, fueled by presence. Words do not convince the universe, it's the vibration behind them that moves it. Therefore, a chant or prayer can cross dimensions because it vibrates in the language of the source. John's text begins with an essential revelation. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. This sentence is much more than theology. It's spiritual physics. The Word, or Logos, represents the living Word, the primal vibration that sustains all things. When one prays with awareness, this inner Logos is accessed, the creative spark that lives within each being. One does not speak to God as someone external, but activates the divine presence that vibrates silently at the center of the being. Christ's lost prayer did not ask, it recognized. And by recognizing, it collapsed possibilities. It created. It materialized. Imagine then that the structure of the universe is like a vast quantum field of infinite possibilities. In this field, everything exists in potential, waiting for a push to bring it into reality. Prayer made with vibrational clarity acts as this push. It doesn't beg, it informs. It's as if it's telling the universe, this is what I choose to create. And the universe, responding to vibration rather than literal words, reorganizes itself to reflect this choice. This is the science of living prayer, a science that operates in the invisible but manifests in the visible. The sacred language is not made up solely of letters or sounds. It is formed by frequencies, codes that operate as access keys to other layers of existence. That's why certain words spoken in specific languages, such as Aramaic, Sanskrit, or ancient Hebrew, carry a distinct force. It's not about superstition, but vibrational structure. Each sacred language was built to contain specific sounds that act as tools for energy tuning. Christ's lost prayer, originally in Aramaic, used exactly this sound structure to open portals between states of consciousness. At this point, it becomes clear that praying is much more than speaking. It's about tuning in. It's about vibrating at the frequency of what you wish to manifest. Prayer becomes a spiritual technology, a bridge between the inner world and the outer field. Once this is understood, there is no longer a need for lengthy pleas. A simple sentence, spoken with a coherent heart, becomes more powerful than 1,000 empty words. The prayer that moves dimensions does not depend on the duration or the number of words, but on the purity of the vibration behind it. It's the quality of presence that transforms. The power of conscious intention combined with spoken word can be felt immediately. The body responds, the heartbeat changes, the breathing calms or intensifies. This is not just psychological, it's energetic. The ancient masters knew this and used prayers as medicine. They were prescribed as remedies, not only to heal the body, but to align the soul. Because all disease, all conflict, all scarcity are signs of misalignment with the harmonic field of creation, and the living prayer is the way back to this harmony. It is the recalibration of the soul. Perhaps the most fascinating thing is to understand that this ability is not limited to masters or initiates. It lives in all of us. We are all born with the ability to pray with power. But we were taught to doubt, to ask without faith, to speak without feeling. The prayer of Christ, the one forgotten by the books, was an invitation to reconnect. It said, "You are an extension of the source. Speak as one who creates, not as one who begs." This prayer is more than a sound. It is a state of being, a state in which there is no separation between what is desired and what one is, a state where the word becomes flesh, because the flesh already vibrates as a word. It's at this point that science and spirituality meet. The vibrational field of the universe is malleable, yes, but it does not respond to the doubting mind. It responds to the vibrating being. The prayer that moves dimensions is the one that is born from alignment, from inner silence, from certainty without arrogance. It's when the human being stops seeking outside and begins to remember the forgotten language that lives in their own chest. This language is the lost song, and when it is rediscovered, there are no more limits, because at that moment, reality itself bends before the vibration of the awakened spirit. The history of human spirituality is also the history of silenced voices. Throughout the centuries, prayers, chants, verses, and mantras, carrying the power to access expanded states of consciousness, were deliberately erased, distorted, or buried under the dust of religious conventions. However, not every trace was lost. There are fragments, scattered words, concealed symbols, and encoded melodies that have survived. They whisper in apocryphal texts, resonate in forgotten oral traditions, and subtly shine in the lines of hidden gospels. This lost chant, attributed to Christ, was not just a common prayer. It was a code, a sound of reconnection, a vibrational technology that allowed the being to pierce the veil of illusion and touch the unnameable. In the Gnostic Gospels, particularly in the Gospel of Thomas and Pistis Sophia, there are passages that mention statements and intonations made by Christ during moments of revelation or healing that do not appear in any of the canonical Gospels. In some of them, Christ not only speaks, he sings, intones, vibrates. Words like Zama Zama Oza Rachama Ozai appear in these texts as ritual chants uttered in specific situations. These words do not belong to a rational vocabulary. They are sacred phonemes. They are vibrational constructs that echo in subtler layers of reality. They are not meant to be understood with the common mind, but to be felt with the awakened heart field. This type of language is recognized by various ancient traditions. The Nazarenes, a people associated with the esoteric lineage of Christ, cultivated sacred chants in Aramaic and Syriac, languages that have an extremely specific sound quality. Words in these languages were not just signs, they were living sounds, vibrational entities. Each syllable had a weight, a direction, an energetic function. These people knew that by singing certain phrases in elevated states of spirit, they could literally access parallel realities, move between dimensions, and provoke healing at the energetic and physical level. Aramaic, the language spoken by Christ, is particularly potent in its sound structure. Unlike modern Western languages, which are more linear and conceptual, Aramaic is circular, symbolic, and deeply vibrational. In its phonetics, there is a direct relationship between the emitted sound and the activated emotional field. Each word in Aramaic has multiple roots, layers of meaning that change according to the intonation, breath, and intention of the speaker. This means that the same set of letters can open different portals of meaning and vibration, depending on the speaker's state. The lost prayer of Christ skillfully utilized these layers. Many scholars and mystics point to the existence of ritualistic chants that did not reach us in written form, but were orally passed down in hidden lineages, such as those of the Essenes and the early Gnostics. These chants were used in times of transition, such as births, deaths, healings, and spiritual initiations. They were not merely devotional expressions, but tools for transitioning between states of consciousness. One of the most striking aspects of these chants is that they functioned independently of rational understanding. The power was in the vibration. The mind might not understand, but the soul knew. The music of the spheres, an ancient concept originating from the Pythagoreans and later from the Neoplatonists, spoke of a cosmic harmony produced by celestial orbits and the vibration of all bodies in the universe. This music, inaudible to common ears, could be accessed by those who internally aligned with the frequency of creation. Christ, in many unofficial texts, is described as someone who heard this music and reproduced it in words. His lost prayer would therefore be a mirror of the universal melody, an attempt to bring the primordial unity's sound into the dense world. A sound that, once heard, would dissolve the separation between the divine and the human. It is also in the songs of the Essenes that we find traces of this practice. They chanted prayers at sunrise, at dusk, during purification rites, and before healing acts. It was not a monotonous repetition. It was a living song, adapted to the moment, to the wind, to the breath. The vibrations of the environment were part of the composition. Nature participated. The earth resonated along. This awareness that prayer is a dialogue with creation and not a desperate monologue to the sky is the basis of the lost song. It does not speak to God. It speaks as God. It resonates at the same frequency as the source. Conscious repetition, as practiced in Eastern mantras, also has parallels in the occult teachings linked to Christ. Repeating a sound with intention, alignment, and presence is not a random mystical practice. It is a vibrational science. When a sound is chanted repeatedly with a focused heart and a quiet mind, it creates an energy spiral. This spiral acts like a magnetic field that alters perception, unlocks spiritual memories, and can even change biological functioning. There are reports in both Christian and Eastern esoteric traditions of monks who, through constant chanting, achieved states of lightness, levitation, and ecstasy. The sound in these practices is a vehicle of light, not only in a poetic sense, but literally. Light, as we know, is also a frequency. The sound, upon hitting certain vibrations, can release photons, particles of light. This means that a prayer made in the right tone, with the correct intention, can literally illuminate matter, alter cellular patterns, and unlock stored traumas. The lost prayer of Christ would have this characteristic. It was a song of light, capable of transforming not only the environment, but the speaker's own body. It rewrote the personal energy field, reconfigured emotions, and prepared the being to remember its divine origin. But over time, this knowledge was diluted. The world became noisy, mechanical, overly rational. The sacred chant was replaced by repetitive and vibrationless liturgies. Humanity disconnected from its own voice as a tool of creation. The voice became an instrument of opinion, judgment, separation. Singing became entertainment, and prayer became a list of empty wishes. The lost chant was buried by haste, fear, doubt. But it never ceased to exist. It just ceased to be remembered. It waits, silently, in the gap between one thought and another, in the space between inhalation and exhalation. It pulses. There are records of profound spiritual ecstasy achieved through chants and prayers in altered states of consciousness. Mystics, shamans, prophets, and saints report being transported to other realities while intoning sacred phrases. Visions, spontaneous healings, communion with higher intelligences. All of this achieved not by rational effort, but by vibrational alignment. The soul responds to sound as the flower does to the sun. The right chant, at the right time, opens portals within us. And Christ, knowing this forgotten wisdom, left us a path, a sound, a word. This verb does not belong to any religion. It does not require a language. It asks for surrender. It asks for presence. It asks for listening. Perhaps that's why so many people are deeply moved when they hear certain songs or chants, even without understanding a single word. The heart understands before the mind, and it is in this deep understanding that the forgotten chant manifests itself. It does not need to be rediscovered as something external. It needs to be remembered as something internal. And when this happens, there is no more separation. The verb vibrates, the being resonates, and reality inevitably bends. We live, for the most part, immersed in the illusion that reality is composed only of what we see, touch, or measure with our physical senses. However, Ancient cultures and spiritual traditions scattered around the world have always asserted that our existence is embedded in an invisible vastness, overlapping layers of realities that coexist with our own. And one of the keys to navigating these hidden dimensions is not in the eyes or hands, but in sound. Conscious sound, the living word, ritual song, prayer vibrated with intention. All are bridges. The lost prayer of Christ, which many believe has the power to move dimensions, was exactly that. A sonic door capable of opening realities beyond time, beyond space, beyond logic. These layers of reality that surround us are not mystical fiction. Quantum physics already suggests, based on multiple theoretical models, that we exist in a multiverse, a web of parallel realities coexisting simultaneously. However, most human consciousness remains trapped in the densest frequency of existence. To access other layers, one must alter their own vibration, tuning the self to a higher frequency. Sound, especially when chanted with deep intention, acts as a catalyst for this vibrational change. It shifts the soul's point of attention, breaks the boundaries of the mind, and opens portals. Christ's lost chant was a dimensional catalyst. It not only connected the human to the divine, it shifted the human into the divine reality. Mystical experiences reported over the centuries often involve the presence of sound. Sounds that have no physical origin. Celestial chants, vibrations audible only in altered states of consciousness. Christian mystics, Sufis, Tibetan monks, Amazonian shamans, and African healers describe situations where mysterious sounds guided them beyond ordinary perception. This is not about hallucination, but resonance. Humans, when entering elevated states of consciousness through meditation, chanting, or vibrational prayer, align with higher frequencies. And at these frequencies, other realities become accessible. The body is still here, but the soul travels. The voice is the vehicle. The sound is the path. This connection between sound and state of consciousness is confirmed by neuroscientific research that shows how certain frequencies alter brain patterns. Specific frequencies, such as theta or gamma waves, induce states of deep relaxation, creativity, and even transcendent visions. The chant of Christ, lost in the shadows of history, was composed of carefully constructed sound patterns to induce this state. It was not a prayer like the common ones, mechanically memorized. It was a dimensional invocation. Its intonation involved the use of certain vibrations that acted directly on the pineal, the heart, and the electromagnetic field of the being. Each note, each pause, each syllable was a key. The heart, often overlooked by reason, is actually the most powerful resonance center in the human body. It generates an electromagnetic field thousands of times stronger than that of the brain. And it is within this field that prayer operates most powerfully. When one sings with the heart, when one prays with total emotional surrender, the heart's field expands. It communicates with the energetic grid of the universe. And that's when the miracle happens. Dimensional doors begin to open. The body attunes itself, space responds, and the soul walks between worlds. Christ deeply understood this spiritual science, and that's why his prayer was not a ritual, it was a journey. Sound meditations practiced by various traditions are clear examples of this. The use of sound as a gateway to higher consciousness is as old as humanity itself. The Om of the Hindus, the harmonic chants of Mongolia, the Hu of the Sufis, all have the same intention: to alter the vibrational state to allow communion with the invisible. These sounds do not need to be rationally understood, as their effect is direct on the energy field. Similarly, Christ's lost chant was not a text to be analyzed, but a flow of sound to be felt. It led the being through subtle layers of reality, dismantling the filters of ordinary perception. The Morphic field, a concept introduced by Rupert Sheldrake, describes how forms, behaviors, and even ideas organize themselves within invisible fields that can be accessed and influenced. Conscious prayer operates in this field, imprinting information and reorganizing patterns. By chanting a prayer in a vibrationally pure way, we are casting coherent information into the personal and collective morphic field. We are restructuring possibilities. Christ's chant, made of primal sounds, was a reorganizer of fields. He restored harmony where there was chaos, reconnected where there was separation, and brought clarity where there was shadow. Natural portals, or energy connection points between dimensions, exist in various places on the planet. Locations such as Machu Picchu, Mount Shasta, the pyramids of Egypt, the Himalayas, and many others are recognized as energy vortexes. But these portals also exist within us, and a prayer made at the right frequency can activate them. The sound aligned with the heart is like a vibrational password that unlocks the internal doors. When Christ sang his lost prayer, he was activating this internal portal, leading his disciples into expanded realities where time was not limiting, matter was not heavy, and separation disappeared. Mass prayer, conducted with collective coherence, has a measurable impact on the surrounding field. Studies like those from Global Coherence show that synchronized meditations, carried out by thousands of people around the world, have the ability to reduce violence, alter weather patterns, and induce harmony in entire regions. This is not a metaphor, it's a measure. The collective vibration of a prayer chanted in unison creates a unified field of energy that restructures the environment. Imagine then the impact of the lost prayer of Christ, chanted by an awakened collective, conscious and vibrationally aligned. What could it not reverse? What could it not restore? Sound not only connects dimensions, it traverses time. There are chants so ancient that they carry within them the memory of the cosmos. They are frequencies that bring with them the vibration of the origin. When a being intones these frequencies, they are not just speaking, they are remembering. They are accessing the archive of creation, updating their own field with the memory of the eternal. The forgotten prayer of Christ, when vibrated with integrity, opens this field of memory. It reconnects the being with the beginning, not as a past, but as a living presence that pulses in the now. A now so full, so real, that it dissolves all pain, all doubt, all separation. Even in silence, the universe listens, because the true prayer begins long before the word. It starts in the space between thoughts, in the intention that precedes the sound, in the void that shapes the verb. When one enters this state of deep listening, of total surrender, the sound that emerges is no longer from the individual, it is from the whole. It is as if the universe, through the speaker, chants itself. The lost prayer of Christ operated on this level. It was not a personal song, it was creation itself expressing through the human voice. And when this happens, the sound becomes light, time bends, and reality transforms. Among the many texts that have been excluded from the official canons, silenced by councils and buried by centuries of religious control, there are records that speak of a prayer uttered by Christ that does not appear in any of the Gospels that are today considered authorized. This prayer, according to manuscripts discovered in caves, buried temples, and forgotten libraries, was not a common supplication. It was different in structure, in purpose, in vibration. It was a direct invocation to the source, without intermediaries, without dogmas, without fear. It did not follow the pattern of human liturgies, but flowed like a river of sound, an intonation with the power to alter not only the state of the one who prayed, but the very reality around them. This prayer is not in the Bible, not because it was not true, but because it was too powerful for the interests of the ecclesiastical empire that was forming. The most intriguing mention of this prayer appears in texts such as the Gospel of the 12 and Pistis Sophia, documents considered heretical by the leaders who consolidated official Christianity. In these texts, there are passages where Jesus withdraws to pray in secret, moments before performing extraordinary acts. But these prayers are not transcribed as formal petitions. They are described as intonations of light, secret words of power, declarations to the seven heavens. In some manuscripts, there are clear references to words and sounds that are not translatable, that escape logic and grammar. These are sounds that must be uttered, not explained, vibrated, not rationalized. According to records from the Codex Escuianus, one of the most enigmatic Gnostic texts, Jesus taught his disciples to pray in silence, not only with their mouths, but also with their hearts vibrating and their eyes closed to the outside world. There are indications that he only transmitted these prayers to those who were ready, as they were not to be used by impure minds or distracted hearts. He instructed them to enter into deep silence and, from this fertile void, to chant words that resembled celestial songs. Some of these words, preserved in excerpts, include phonemes such as EU, Zorokathora, Melchizedek, and others that resonate with high frequencies, far beyond common language. The most powerful frequency contained in this forgotten prayer was, according to the records, that of absolute love. Love that does not expect a return, that does not ask for validation, that does not beg for approval. This love was the central vibration of the prayer. Christ did not teach his disciples to pray for protection or prosperity. He taught them to vibrationally unite with the source, the whole, the unnameable. When this union occurred, all needs disappeared, for the speaker became the very answer to the prayer. He no longer needed to seek, he was. He did not beg, he recognized. This shift in spiritual posture is what made this prayer so transformative and so dangerous to control systems. When we deconstruct the Lord's Prayer through the lens of Gnostic tradition and the etymological study of Aramaic, we discover that it is merely a diluted version of the true vibrational chant that Christ would intone. The phrase, "Our Father who art in heaven," in Aramaic can be interpreted as the origin of the vibration that pulses throughout the cosmos, and "Thy will be done" does not imply submission, but full alignment with the creative intelligence that dwells in everything. The true prayer does not plead for divine favor. It dissolves into the vibration of the whole, merging with the primordial sound that sustains the universe. Christ knew this, and his secret prayer was this vibrational gateway. There are also mentions in texts such as the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, where prayer is presented as a song of the soul, a sound that can only be heard with the inner ears, a sound that springs from deep silence. Mary is described as the disciple who most understood this mystery, and therefore was the target of jealousy and rejection by the apostles who were still tied to the external vision of Christ. According to this gospel, Mary practiced this prayer in moments of retreat and was able to enter into direct communion with Christ on higher planes. Prayer, then, was not a tool of faith, but a real bridge between dimensions. The language used by Christ in his intimate prayers was rich in symbolic layers, but it also carried an unusual vibrational precision. In some fragments translated by modern scholars, the presence of phonemes that provoke physiological effects is noticeable, sounds that stimulate the pineal gland, activate energy centers, and induce states of expanded consciousness. This leads us to conclude that these prayers were not mere rituals, they were sonic codes. They were formulas to realign the human vibrational field with the purest frequencies of existence. A body in coherence with these frequencies becomes a vehicle of the divine. And once in this state, the impossible becomes everyday. In the texts of Pistis Sophia, we find the idea that the true word is not constructed with the logic of the mind, but with the fire of the Spirit. Christ did not utter hollow words. Each syllable carried light. Each intonation awakened something dormant. The sounds vibrated by him crossed time, reached subtle bodies, altered the field around. When he prayed, there was no separation between sound and intention. He became the Word itself, and the Word created. The forgotten prayer contained this same quality. It was alive, it had movement, it responded. It was not a sound tied to time. It was a river that flowed from the eternal. This prayer, in its essence, functioned as an internal alchemy. When chanted with absolute presence, it reorganized the elements of the being, transformed fear into confidence, judgment into compassion, limitation into expansion. It was a vibrational process of transmutation. Like a metal turning into gold, the human being who vibrated this prayer began to awaken their divine nature. They remembered, they reintegrated. It was a reversal of the fall, a return to the spiritual home. It was a seed of eternity planted in the heart of the flesh. And perhaps the most extraordinary element of this prayer was its simplicity. It wasn't long. It wasn't filled with frills. It was pure, direct, clear. It did not seek to convince, only to resonate. And it was in this purity that its strength resided, for the closer to the source, the simpler the expression. The universe, in its vastness, moves with precise laws, but also with minimalist beauty and elegance. The lost prayer of Christ was the sonic expression of this principle. It did not need to be understood, only felt. It penetrated resistances, dissolved doubts, and opened the sacred space where the divine could dwell without effort. If it was never fully disclosed, perhaps it was for protection. Knowledge, when it reaches those who are not ready, can be distorted, trivialized, even used for manipulation. Therefore, many of the ancient masters veiled their teachings with symbols, metaphors, and silence. They knew that to access the sacred, one must be vibrationally prepared. And so, Christ's prayer, the one not found in the Bible, did not disappear. It merely hid. Not to be forgotten, but to be remembered at the right time. The time when awakened hearts would recognize it not by hearing, but by resonating. Because in the end, this prayer did not need to be heard. It needed to be felt. In the depths of the esoteric teachings attributed to Christ, there is a revelation that has always resonated strongly among the initiated. The word, when uttered with absolute truth and alignment, ceases to be just sound and transforms into matter. This is not a spiritual metaphor, it's a vibrational reality. The Word became flesh, as the Gospel of John tells us, does not refer only to the birth of the Christ-man, but to a universal principle shown to us by Him. Everything that is vibrated with pure consciousness and intention, aligned with the Source, has the power to materialize. Prayer, when done at this level, does not seek to change the world. It recreates it from the original sound. The lost chant, then, was not just a bridge to the divine. It was a generating code, a sonic equation that condensed light into form. Miracles recorded in the Gospels, instantaneous healings, multiplication of food, control over natural elements, have always been treated as exceptions, as isolated events operated by a being outside the norm. But what if, instead of exceptions, these events were demonstrations of a broader law, a law of vibration, frequency, and manifestation? When Christ said, "Your faith has saved you," He was not referring to a passive belief. He was speaking of a vibrational state of such complete certainty that matter could no longer resist. This faith was not emotional. It was vibrational. It was the silent conviction that creates realities. The prayer made in this state becomes incarnate word. It leaves the invisible plane and densifies until it manifests. Historical accounts, both within and outside of Christian traditions, confirm this ability. In Eastern manuscripts, Tibetan records, African and indigenous stories, there are descriptions of men and women who, by chanting sacred sounds, healed the sick, invoked rain, materialized food, and even disappeared before human eyes. These phenomena are not products of mystical fantasy. They are manifestations of a spiritual science that has always been present but was marginalized because it challenged the pillars of human power. The incarnate word is what makes the human divine. And nothing is more dangerous to control systems than a human being who recognizes their power to co-create. The materialization of prayer is directly linked to the emotional field and internal coherence. A sound emitted by a doubtful mind is fragile, but the same sound, uttered by a being in a state of unity, reverberates like thunder through the plains. Christ's prayer, the one forgotten and hidden for centuries, was composed of sounds that, when vibrated with total presence, reorganize the structure of local reality. This means that, by intoning the prayer in a state of coherence, the speaker became an access point to the creative field. He was not asking something of God. He was manifesting God in that instant, in that space, through his own flesh, his own voice. Cases of instantaneous healings attributed to Christ are clear examples of this phenomenon. A blind man regaining sight, a paralytic walking, a woman healed just by touching his garments. All of these are expressions of matter alteration by the vibration of the field. Christ did not heal with touch alone. He healed with the vibrational field of his word. The sound that came from his mouth was supported by an internal state of unity with the source. This is the key. Sound without alignment is just noise, but sound with total presence becomes a command in the code of reality. The secret prayer contained this structure, this pattern, this vibration that shaped matter like an artist shapes clay. Modern physics is beginning to validate this view. Experiments with high-frequency sound show that particles can be organized into complex patterns solely through sound vibration. In cymatics laboratories, it is observed how different frequencies produce specific geometric shapes in materials such as sand, water, and oil. If this is possible with simple substances, why not in the human body? Why not in emotional reality? When Christ vibrated his prayer, he was reorganizing the fields. He was restoring the original order of creation through sound. He was not violating the laws of nature. He knew them in their depth and knew how to operate them masterfully. The internal state of the speaker is what defines the power of the prayer. When a human being prays in a hurry with fear or anxiety, the vibration generated is weak, scattered. But when one prays with a clean heart, with pure intention, and with a present body, the prayer becomes an instrument of creation. Christ lived in this state. He did not need to prepare to pray. He was living prayer. He walked in coherence. His words were not just sounds. They were extensions of his vibration. Therefore, every sentence spoken by him carried the force of an entire universe. The prayer that he taught his closest disciples had this same quality. It was a code that transformed the speaker into an incarnated word. Birth, death, and rebirth are highly vibrational moments surrounded by specific sounds. The first cry of a baby is the soul's entry into the density of flesh. The last breath of someone in transition is the release of the spirit to other planes. Between these 2 points, sound accompanies the entire journey. Words, music, sighs, prayers. Everything vibrates. Everything builds. Christ's prayer was a sound of rebirth. It reconfigured the inner field of the being so that it could be reborn within itself, break the matrix of fear, and live as a being of light and density. It was a sound of transfiguration, a sound that released the prison of form. This prayer can also be understood as a programming code for reality. Just as software is written with precise commands, the universe responds to vibrational commands with equal precision. But these commands are not made in human languages. They are made in vibrational language. Christ's chant used these commands. It was like accessing an internal terminal of the reality system and inserting lines of code that rewrite patterns of pain, scarcity, separation. The prayer not only healed, it reprogrammed, and by doing so, it transformed the internal and external world. The Logos, a fundamental concept in Greek and Christian tradition, represents this organizing force that structures the cosmos. Christ is identified as the incarnate Logos, the living Word. This means that he did not just come to speak about the divine, but to show what happens when a human being fully aligns with the vibration of the Word. The forgotten prayer is the map to this alignment. When practiced with truth, it leads the speaker to experience the state of being Logos, a being that speaks and creates, that vibrates and manifests, that breathes and transforms. The word ceases to be a symbol and becomes reality. The human body is a vibrational instrument. Each cell resonates. Every organ emits and receives frequencies. The heart, the lungs, the skin, everything vibrates. When prayer is performed in alignment with the body, it is not confined to the sound of the mouth. It spreads. It becomes a vibrational symphony. The lost prayer of Christ utilized this inner orchestra. It was not made only with the tongue, but with the entire body. Breathing was part of the intonation. The heart rate adjusted to the sound. The auric field expanded. It was a total experience, a state of fusion with the vibration of the divine. To be the prayer, that is the ultimate truth. Not to pray as a separate act, but to live in a state of prayer. To be a living presence. To be the incarnate Word. When this state is achieved, every step becomes a song. Every look, a blessing. Every word, a seed of light. And this is what Christ came to teach with his secret prayer. It was not just a tool, it was a reminder. A memory of what we are before the masks, the beliefs, the fears. When one lives in this state, reality bends, the impossible dissolves. because at this level, the being not only speaks with God, it speaks as God. In the space between sound and silence dwells a mystery so profound that only the most awakened masters dared to name it. The lost prayer of Christ, which vibrated beyond language, carried within it not only sacred sounds, but pauses filled with presence. It was in these intervals between one intonation and another that the invisible revealed itself most intensely. Silence, far from being absence, was the substance that sustained vibration. It was the womb where the word was born. Christ himself, in his deepest moments of connection, withdrew to the desert, to the tops of mountains, into the heart of absolute silence, because he knew that there, in the vibrant quiet of non-speaking, lived the presence that creates all. The prayer that moves dimensions is not made only of what is said, but also of what is silently revered. Mystics from all traditions have always spoken about this type of silence, a state in which the soul aligns with the rhythm of the universe, where time dissolves and the mind can no longer impose its logic. It is in this silence that the language of the divine becomes audible, not through the external ears, but through the internal fields of perception. The silence between the words of the secret prayer was as important as the sounds emitted, for it allowed the vibration to penetrate subtler layers of reality. Each pause was an expansion. Each non-word was a presence. Christ understood this deeply and used this interval as if it was an essential part of the chant. He did not just speak to God, he listened with his entire body. Contemporary science is beginning to recognize the impact of silent spaces on neurological and emotional reconfiguration. Studies show that profound silence, especially when sustained for extended periods, has the power to reorganize mental patterns, reduce inflammation, stimulate neural regeneration, and increase sensitivity to energetic reality. This explains why contemplative traditions have always valued the vow of silence, wordless meditation, and retreat from the world. Christ's prayer was sustained by these moments. Its effectiveness did not come from what was said, but from the harmony between sound and pause. It was a dance between vibration and receptivity. Deserts and mountains were not chosen randomly as places of prayer. They possess a dense silence, almost tangible, capable of leading the speaker to expanded states of perception. Silence is not just the absence of noise. It is pure presence. It is vibration at rest. It is unexpressed potential. When Christ withdrew to pray in these places, he was not just seeking peace. He was seeking to tune in with the primordial tone, the one that precedes all sounds. And there, in this sacred space where there are no human voices or distractions from the world, the prayer truly happened. Not as a discourse, but as a fusion between the being and the whole. The masters of the desert, like the Essenes and the therapists of Alexandria, understood that silence was a gateway. They practiced it not as an escape, but as a return. It was in silence that they remembered the sacred words, not by reading, but by resonance. The living scriptures were inscribed in the vibrational field and only became accessible when the mind ceased its interference. Christ's secret prayer, as taught at the deepest levels, required this listening. One could not simply speak. It was necessary to listen, not with the ears, but with the whole soul. It was necessary to allow silence to reveal what no word could contain. Music, the quintessential vibrational art, also acknowledges the importance of silence. It is in the space between the notes that emotion, tension, and beauty are built. Without pause, there is no melody, only continuous noise. The same applies to vibrational prayer. The silence between the chants is what gives depth to the sound. It creates the necessary space for the vibration to act, for the field to reorganize, for the presence to manifest. Christ, in chanting his forgotten prayer, made conscious use of these pauses. Each silence was an offering, each interval a dimensional opening. There are accounts of mystics who, after remaining in absolute silence for days or weeks, began to hear inner sounds never perceived before, tones, chants, words that seemed to come from within and without at the same time. These experiences, often labeled as mystical, are actually manifestations of the vibrational field that reveals itself when the noise ceases. Christ's prayer operated in this field. It was a catalyst for this type of perception. It was not a prayer to be memorized, but to be absorbed in its entirety. The silence between its syllables was the space where the divine touched the flesh. Deep silence also carries a therapeutic quality. It allows hidden memories to surface, repressed emotions to find an outlet, mental patterns to dissolve. That's why the Christic prayer was not done hastily. It needed time, space, internal listening. Each intonation was followed by silence, and in this silence, the hidden layers of the being were reorganized. It was a healing through resonance, not explanation. It was an energetic release, not a logical persuasion. It was a reunion with what was always present, but never perceived in the hustle and bustle of everyday noise. When one understands that silence is not emptiness but fullness, the relationship with prayer changes radically. One no longer prays to obtain something. One prays to become silence, to become a receptive space, to become a channel for the primal sound. Christ lived in this state. His prayer did not begin with words. It began with presence. He went within himself. He quieted down. And only then did he allow the word to emerge, not as thought, but as vibration. This is the essence of the lost prayer. It does not originate from the mind that wants. It originates from the silence that allows. In some accounts from desert communities, it is said that Christ taught a way of praying without words, gazing at the rising sun in silence, feeling the vibration of light in every cell. This practice was seen as the purest of all, the formless prayer, the prayer without request, the prayer that simply gives thanks for existence. In this state, there is no longer a separation between the speaker and the spoken, between sound and silence, between the being and the divine. Everything merges, everything vibrates in unison. It is in this state that true transformation occurs, not as an external miracle, but as an internal recognition that the sacred has never been far away. Christ, the master of silence and the word, showed us that there is no true word without listening. There is no true sound without a pause, and there is no true prayer without the silence that sustains it. The prayer that moves dimensions, the one that has been forgotten by books but preserved in the heart of the human soul, does not always need to be spoken. Often, it just needs to be felt, breathed, lived. In the space between one word and another, between one thought and another, it emerges. And when that happens, there is nothing more to seek. Because at that moment, the lost song resounds, and not with words, but with the silent truth that vibrates beyond everything. Throughout the centuries, humanity has swayed between moments of spiritual elevation and deep plunges into the darkness of separation. And in each cycle of decline, there has always been a silent whisper, a hidden reminder, an echo from time immemorial, calling back to the origin. This whisper was the lost word, the forgotten vibration, the sound that connects all worlds. Now, at this exact moment in history, amidst the collapse of certainties, the exhaustion of material illusions, and the urgent search for meaning, something begins to emerge. Not as a novelty, but as a return. The era of the living word resurfaces, and with it, the forgotten chant of Christ begins to be heard again, not in the pulpits, not in religious institutions, but in the burning silence of the awakened heart. There are ancient prophecies that speak of this time. Prophecies recorded in the Andes, in the Himalayas, among the Aborigines of Australia and the shamans of Siberia. All converge on the idea that there would be a point in time when the human being would have to remember the original sound, the pure verb, the word that generates and regenerates. The Mayans called this era the time of the return of memory. The Hopis called it the time of purification, and the Essenes called it the dawn of the inner word. It is no coincidence that these traditions, separated by oceans and millennia, point to the same phenomenon, the reactivation of the creative power of the word. The lost prayer of Christ is part of this call. It is not an artifact of the past, it is the password of the now. We are living through a collective process of deprogramming. Empty words are losing their strength. Soulless speeches no longer support structures. Prayers made out of fear or automatism are being emptied. This is not loss, it's purification. The verb, to return with potency, must first free itself from everything that imprisoned it. The religious forms, the dogmas, the mindless repetitions, all of this is crumbling to make way for the living prayer. And this prayer does not depend on temples. It is born in nature, on the streets, in homes, within each being that dares to quiet and listen. The return of the lost chant will not be televised, nor institutionalized. It will be felt, deep down, as an irrepressible vibration. Science, intriguingly, is beginning to validate this movement. Research on sound, frequency, and consciousness is exploding worldwide. Scientists are rediscovering what the ancients always knew, that the universe is made of vibration, that words alter DNA, that intention shapes matter. We are living in a time when spirituality and science are beginning to speak the same language, the language of conscious sound. This reunion is one of the clearest signs that the word is returning to its origin. The lost prayer, the one made not with lips alone, but with the whole being, is beginning to find space amid the chaos. Because where there is collapse, there is possibility. Where everything falls apart, the word can recreate. The return of the word is also the return of listening. For the first time in many centuries, crowds are beginning to take interest in practices of silence, meditation, healing sound, and ancestral chanting. What was once restricted to the initiated is now opening up to the collective. The chant of Christ is no longer hidden. It is being remembered by thousands of souls around the world, many of them not even knowing they are intoning the same frequencies. A sound that spontaneously emerges in dreams, in meditations, in moments of deep pain or silent ecstasy. It is the soul recognizing its own language, even if the mind still does not understand. This movement is not uniform. It happens in waves, in pulsations, in invisible networks of awakening. And one of the most evident forms of its manifestation is in art. Musicians, poets, painters, dancers, all are being touched by an inspiration that comes from a place that cannot be named. Art becomes the vehicle of the word. The stage, the paper, the screen become temples where the word incarnates again. Christ taught that the kingdom of God is within. Now, artists show that this kingdom can be expressed out here through sound, color, and movement. The prayer that moves dimensions manifests itself through pure creativity, through uncensored vibrational expression. But it's not just a collective phenomenon. The return of the word is also personal, intimate, sometimes solitary. It's the moment when the human being looks inward and feels they can no longer live separated from the truth. It's when old words return to the mind unbidden, when the need to sing, to chant, to pray without form takes over the body. It's when tears emerge without a rational cause, simply because of a felt presence. This is the return of vibrational memory, not a memory made of images or thoughts, but of sound, of frequency, of silent truth. The inner Christ begins to vibrate again. And the lost chant, which seemed to be buried under millennia of forgetfulness, rises in waves of light. There are initiatory schools, today as in the past, that have preserved this knowledge, but now they are no longer hidden in caves or distant temples. They are in every healing circle, in every meditation group, in every heart that seeks sincerely. The teaching is no longer restricted, it is universal, but it requires maturity. The word cannot be handed out like a toy. It is a tool of creation, and as such, it requires responsibility. Therefore, the prayer that moves dimensions will not be discovered out of curiosity, but out of a real need for transformation. It will come when the ego quiets and the spirit takes the helm. The activation of the lost chant is also the awakening of a new form of relationship with the divine, no longer as subjects before a king, but as conscious children in communion with the source. Prayer ceases to be a sporadic practice and becomes a continuous posture. Every gesture turns into a prayer, every word a decree, every silence a temple. The human being becomes the altar, and on this living altar, the word incarnates. Reality reorganizes. The world changes, not because someone ordered it from the outside, but because many recreated it from the inside out through aligned vibration. The return of the verb is also a call for each one to find their own frequency, their unique note in the symphony of creation. It's not about copying a sound, but about recognizing which sound your soul came to vibrate. Christ did not come to teach a religion. He came to remind human beings of their forgotten music. And now, in this time of rupture and rebirth, this call intensifies. With each heart that responds, the prayer strengthens. With each being that aligns, reality recalibrates. The world does not need to be saved. It needs to be remembered. And it is through the word that this remembrance happens. We have reached a point in the journey from which there is no turning back. The word has been released. The verb has returned. And its presence is felt in the undercurrents of life, in unlikely encounters, in the eyes of those who awaken. The lost prayer, now rediscovered, will not impose itself forcefully. It will whisper. It will touch gently. And when it touches, everything will become clear. Because it is not the end of a secret. It is the beginning of a memory. The memory that we have always been sound, we have always been verb, we have always been creators. And now we are ready to speak again, to sing again, to pray not with words, but with our whole being. We have reached the point where the veil completely unravels. After journeying through the paths of sound, history, vibration, science, and transcendence, a truth reemerges like a flame lit within the chest. You were never separated from the lost song. The prayer that moves dimensions is not a formula hidden in an ancient parchment, nor a secret buried by silent monks. It has always been in you, latent, waiting to be recognized. You are the prayer. Your body is the temple. Your vibration is the melody. Your presence is the altar where the divine reveals itself. What seemed like hidden knowledge was, in fact, a reflection of what your soul always knew. The word lives in you. The return of the verb does not depend on external rituals or the memorization of mysterious chants. It happens when you decide to align thought, emotion, breath, and presence. When you speak with truth, act with compassion, and feel with wholeness, you are intoning the forgotten chant. Christ did not come to show something beyond human reach. He came to remind us that the human, when awakened, is the miracle itself. When you breathe consciously, when you silence and listen with your heart, when you radiate love without expecting anything in return, you are activating the same prayer that Christ whispered in the mountains. You are becoming a channel. You are becoming the verb. You are finally becoming the sound that transforms. Your entire journey up to this point has been a preparation. Every pain, every silence, every fall, and every rise have been tuning your frequency. Prayer is not just in beautiful words. It manifests when you embrace pain without judgment, when you look into someone's eyes and see beyond the masks, when you are grateful for life even without understanding everything. In these simple and powerful actions, you chant a prayer that crosses dimensions. And when many do this together, a network forms. A vibrational mesh begins to support a new reality. A new earth begins to emerge, not through revolutions, but with coherent vibrations. Your body is the instrument. Each cell, each breath, each heartbeat vibrates. When you move with presence, you are dancing the prayer. When you speak with clarity and listen with empathy, you are chanting the prayer. When you forgive, you are releasing the sound trapped in old guilt. And when you love, without attachment or control, you are vibrating at the frequency of creation. This is the simplest and most sublime mystery. There is nothing you need to seek outside. The key is in vibrating, in aligning, in allowing. Prayer is not said, it is lived. Christ said that the kingdom is within. He was not lying. And this kingdom vibrates, it pulsates, it sings, and you are the echo of this song. It doesn't matter if you don't feel ready. The verb already pulsates within you. It doesn't matter if you think you've made too many mistakes. The sound of the source does not judge, it only invites. Each step you take towards truth is another verse in the living prayer. There's no longer a need to wait for a miracle. The miracle is remembering. It's recognizing that separation never existed, that the prayer was never outside, that you are, have always been, and always will be, the word that creates. To live as a prayer, one must surrender. Trust in life. Stop resisting the flow. Let the word emerge from the center, without effort, without control. When you express yourself from this place, the world around you responds. People feel it. Spaces open up. Synchronicities occur. Because the universe recognizes the vibration of truth. Prayer doesn't convince. It resonates. It touches. It transforms, not by force, but by presence. The Christ who intoned the lost song knew this, and that's why his word healed, freed, ignited light where there was shadow. Now it's your turn. Don't expect perfection. Don't wait for an ideal moment. Start where you are, with what you have, at the frequency you can access. Chant your own prayer. Maybe it comes in the form of silence, maybe in a hug, maybe in a forgiveness that seemed impossible. But it will come, because it's within you, because it is you. Each time you choose truth over appearances, peace over internal war, compassion over rigidity, you are resonating with the internal Christ. You are chanting the sound that dissolves the boundaries between heaven and earth. And when you live like this, something begins to change in the collective. Other souls start to remember. They feel your field, they draw near, they resonate. And so the prayer multiplies, expands, creates new realities. You become a mirror of the source, a living reflection of what has always been, a complete, present, vibrant human being, a conscious co-creator, a channel of the primordial sound, a point of light amidst the noise of the world, and every new gesture of yours is a score of the forgotten chant coming back to life. The most beautiful thing of all is that there is no fixed model. Your prayer doesn't need to resemble anyone else's. It's unique, unrepeatable, irreplaceable, and that's exactly why it's essential. Without your frequency, the symphony of creation is incomplete. Without your sound, the universe cannot vibrate with all its beauty. Christ's prayer is universal, but it manifests in a unique way in each being. You are the missing note. You are the vibration that completes. You are the word that returns. Now, the choice is yours. You can continue living as a spectator of life, repeating soulless phrases, following models that don't resonate. Or you can stand up, take a deep breath, quiet your mind, and allow the word to emerge from within. You can live like a prayer, speak with power, listen with your heart, act with intention. You can be the miracle you've been waiting for. Because the lost prayer is not in books, nor temples, nor formulas. It's in you, and the whole world is waiting to hear the sound that only you can emit. The chant was never lost. It was just waiting. And now, through your presence, it returns. Not as an isolated sound, but as a living, pulsating melody that transcends ages, dissolves walls, heals wounds, and unites worlds. You are the prayer, and the time is now. To vibrate is to create. To be is to pray. To live is to remember. May the word be made in you. May the verb awaken. May the song continue. Because the divine, after all, has always spoken with your voice. And now that you have crossed this portal of wisdom and vibration, I ask you, Mind Unfettered, what changes within you upon realizing that the prayer that moves dimensions is not outside, but pulses in your very essence? If you discovered today that you carry the master key in your hands, the one that opens portals, dissolves boundaries, and manifests realities, what would you create first? Share here in the comments, with presence and truth, what reality you feel you are ready to co-create now that you know the verb lives within you. Your sharing may activate other souls. It could be the echo that awakens someone who has been silent for too long. This space here is sacred, and your voice is part of the symphony. Do not hesitate. Write. Expand. And if what you heard today resonated deeply, the next step is right in front of you now. On the screen, the following video is already waiting for you. The secret code of the Tree of Life. Unlock the hidden power of Kabbalah. An even deeper dive into the mysteries of creation, where you will discover the hidden paths of the Tree of Life and how this ancient wisdom can lead you to the conscious manifestation of everything your soul came to accomplish. Click now. Your journey is just beginning. Until then, vibrant soul. We are the Mind Unfettered, and the word lives within you.